Hey, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this September 19th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's Pacific time on First Amendment. Or you can get the show at 11 a.m. Pacific time. If you can't get those two shows, go to my long-standing website at arcticon.com. And if you're lucky and you live in the South, in states like Alabama, parts of Florida, you can get my show on several AM stations that play this very, very interesting and truth-seeking show. And when I say that, I mean that. We got to get to the bottom of things, is what I say. And go to my website. It's been there for 10 years, talking about the Vatican-led New World Order. And those words are quite important because I'm telling you, if you don't get to the bottom of our problems, where they come from, how it actually operates behind the scenes, they can never be solved. And unfortunately, your mainstream media, most of your alternative media, your politicians, your religious leaders are all in the Vatican's back pocket. And so you're never going to get the truth about what's happening in your world today and what's happened in the past. As they say, if we don't understand history, we will repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Well, I say this: if you've been given the wrong history, if you've been given Jesuit revisionist history, you're going to continue to be considered, in my eyes, lambs at the slaughter. And that's exactly what's going on today. This idea that Syria is a powder keg, we don't even talk about the 400,000 or 500,000 Syrians who've been slaughtered because of American policy, and because of Vatican connection to that and their strategic plan to destabilize the Middle East and to bring radical Islamic terrorism right to your shores. That's the broad overview. Now, today is part 15 of what I call the greatest off-Broadway stage play ever produced in the history of mankind, the presidential elections 2016. Now, they put on this production every 4 years, and it has grand and great implications all over the world. Now, let me say this. I've been looking at this grand story of America for a long, long time, ever since I became a journalist in the mid-'70s. And I saw it first as a reporter wanting to get to the truth. I've been around. I've seen President Carter, Reagan, the rest of all these guys, Ford, all come in. And it might be interesting, before I explain, well, last week, by the way, I did a number of great interviews with people from the Alamo ministry, showing how religious persecution is here today, and how ministries who preach the gospel and are not afraid to call the Vatican what it is, the Antichrist institution, are targeted and manipulated and put on the list for destruction. Then I interviewed an attorney, John Levy, who I've been interviewing for the last decade. And we deal with the Vatican from a legal point of view, what they're exactly doing with their money laundering banking system, how they infiltrate all of our organizations somehow all over the world, creating havoc within, bilking people. There's so many lawsuits against the Vatican that, it is amazing. So I take it from a spiritual point of view with the Alamo ministry showing that persecution spiritually by the Vatican. Then I look at it from a legal point of view, what they're doing with their grand money laundering operation through many lawsuits that John Levy has filed, and his interest in basically calling these people to task, which is not an easy thing to do. And then thirdly, I interviewed Leo Zagami from Rome, and we look at more of an esoteric, more of a view from the inside, him being an Illuminati insider as a child, coming from an aristocratic family in where was it, in Sardinia, not Sardinia, in Sicily, and I've traced his story for the last decade. So we get an overview of many, many things. And I like to contact him because he really lets me know a few things going on inside the Vatican that we don't get here. And I can verify that because when I worked in Rome, I was a mainstream journalist for 6 years there, and worked for the American newspaper as well. And I can tell you that many things that I saw in the papers in the French and the Italian papers back then never got here. So there's a number of things. For example, did we know that Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook guru, was visiting the Pope recently? No, we didn't hear that here. And many, many things go on behind the scenes over there that are of interest here that we should know that they want to keep from the sheeple here. The people, look, let's look, before I get into part 15 of the greatest off-Broadway stage play ever produced, let me say this. The American people have been treated like with kid gloves. They have been given an educational system. We spend more money per student than anybody in the world, and we have dumbos running around. We're not educating our children. We are giving them something to do. And the government, our pastors of all these ecumenical churches that have sold out to the Vatican, are not getting you don't get the truth anywhere. And we have a bunch of dummies walking around. For example, I remember even about 10 years ago, I took pictures of all these presidents and really interesting people that they should know in our government. They had no idea. I'd show a picture of President Carter. They had no idea. I'd show a picture of Ford. They didn't know who he was. I even went back and showed them a picture of Nixon. I showed one person a picture of Lincoln they didn't know. I mean, what is going on? I mean, people, to understand what's happening, you have to take an interest. And I find that people in this country are not interested at all in any of this stuff. And that serves the powers that be. Well, anyway, enough on the soapbox. So anyway, here's what I do. I've been looking at this grand play they've presented, a stage play, for many, many years. And the one thing I found out is the more you dig into the truth, the more you get to the bottom of all of this problem, the Vatican comes up. And when you start looking at the scene here, you find that it's very difficult to uncover a lot of these secrets because it is a secret society. So you have to go back into history. And that gets difficult when you find out that a lot of it has been in the mainstream books and everything have been distorted. And even if you look at some of the books coming out now, especially by, I'm going to play a little clip by Bill O'Reilly from Fox News. And he's writing all these historical books, but none of them deal with the real secret of the Vatican behind our Revolutionary War, the Vatican's influence today. In fact, when you see his show on Ash Wednesday, he'll even have the ashes on his forehead. He's a card-carrying Catholic. He's got to know what's going on behind the scenes, and he's not giving you the truth. He says, oh, the spin stops here. The spin starts there. And although he gives you good information, it's only kind of like when you get a fudge sundae. You're only getting the top of it. You're only getting the chocolate on the top, but you're never getting what's really important in that in the real. You're not getting the real good stuff at the bottom. And that's what we try to do here, is to show you that this is not far-fetched stuff. And if we look at it like I look at it now like a movie reviewer watching this grand movie, which is fiction. They're creating this story that when we really look at it, there's a lot of missing parts. And so I said one thing about journalism. If you go into journalism and you want to get to the truth, and you're doing it as long as I will, you will go crazy. Because you just can't believe that this is going on, but it is. And so you have to take a kind of half-hearted approach at it. When I say that, I mean this. You heard me kind of laugh a little bit when I was saying that. Yeah, that's the only way you can get through this nonsense. And the nonsense that you listen on the mainstream news And then you go to the internet and you start seeing more nonsense and more infiltration. And you think the Jesuits are going to leave the internet alone? Forget about it. They're going to control that too. And it's usually the guys who come out first, like Alex Jones and others, who are, making millions of dollars off of this, not giving you the whole story and leading you down a wrong path. What we do know is that most of the things you get, and the reason I center on the presidential elections every 4 years, it kind of brings everything together. And so I look at the people that are the main actors in this, and let me be clear. These people are stage actors put in a position to make you believe it's true. And although people said, well, Greg, these are really happening, yes, but what they're doing is you giving their side of the story, their script, so to speak, and then you have to let's talk about the actors first, and let's look really what they're doing. The first actor starring this year, of course, is the outgoing president, Obama, taking a bigger role than I'd expected him to. Because basically, some people are saying the reason he's even campaigning for the other actress, Hillary Clinton, the old hag they've brought back for 30 years. I mean, give me a break. Okay. Listen, some people say, and I even talked to John Levy, a very, very rational thinking attorney, and he said he thinks there's a 50-50 chance that there won't be an election in 50 days. That's how much time we have right now. And that something will happen, and Obama will stay in office. So he even thinks there's a 50-50 chance. Now, let's be clear. Obama is a stage actor. He's been on the scene now for a while, coming out of nowhere, really. He was a first-term senator from Illinois. His background is quite Muslim, quite interesting. Some saying that he shouldn't even be president because of his birth certificate and his birthplace. And then others say, well, we researched it and found, and I say this, you probably have, but did you ever hear of people changing documents? You can go right now many places overseas and get a better passport. If you pay $5,000, then you can. It'll look better than the one you get from the States. So the point about Obama being a citizen or not, they're going to put in their role as president who they want. Now, why would I say that? Because they are the ones who cast, just like they do in Hollywood, who they want to play this part. So they selected him to be the first black president. Kind of interesting. Now they want the first woman president. And what's going to come after that? I'd like to see the first Polish president. Right. And I said that to somebody else, and somebody said, well, and they were a Clinton supporter, and I was having fun with them. I said, well, I think I'm one of the minorities. Can you imagine if you had the Polish jokes that would come out? My God. We can't put the government in the hands of a stupid Polak, can we? And this lady was quick to point out, well, you had a pope. And I went, oh boy, you got a point there. And I didn't want to get into what I thought about that. But the point I'm trying to make is Obama is there. Now, who really is he? He's selected, he's been cast, just like it was in a Hollywood movie, for this part. And what has he done, really, if we really know what's going on? What was his major role? Why did the Jesuits, who are the writers, the script writers of this play, working for the producers, the Vatican, and all these secret societies and all their big money people who are funding this play, why did they put him there? Well, look at the results. We have a weakened military. We have ISIS, this creation by our policies in the Middle East, growing by leaps and bounds. We have destabilization in most every country in the Middle East. He is also given not a very warm welcome to Israel. His relations with the Israeli Prime Minister are very cold, chilly, and he seems to support behind the scenes by destabilizing these countries along with Clinton. I'm talking about Iraq, Libya, Syria, Egypt, etc. He seems to create a fertile ground to create all of these terrorist groups, ISIS to be one, which we see today. There were 3 attacks over the weekend, one in Minnesota and one in New York, and then a bomb that didn't explode in New Jersey. And now they're chasing around this guy who's a naturalized Afghani citizen, 28 years old, who works for his family's First American chicken restaurant somewhere in New Jersey. And there's an all-points bulletin out. So we got this kind of radical Muslim jihad going on here, but he won't even call it that. All of his policies have been sympathetic to the Muslims, radical Islam, and all of his policies seem to weaken our country. That's his role. Now, people say, well, Greg, you're calling this a fiction movie. It's really happening. Yes, I call it a fiction movie because they're presenting us fiction, and then they've turned it into a reality show because we believe it. And I said to people, as a movie reviewer for 30 years on this story, can't we look a little deeper? Don't you think these people have something else going on behind the scenes? And many people say yes, but what? Well, I think it's not that difficult to figure out. When we understand who the writers are, when we understand who the producers are, being the Jesuits and the Vatican and all of their secret societies, then we can understand that they're only going to write in what they want in this movie. And I can be attest to that because many of the episodes that I would like to see, that others who are looking at this connection between the Vatican and our country and really what's going on around the world, it never seems to make it. And so it becomes almost kind of like a joke when you read it on the internet, right? And then you mix into the fact that they put their own writers in there to skew the truth. You got a big problem. You know, all I want to see is a really good movie. And this one, to me, is not telling us the full story that we should. You ever go to a movie, you know, Steven Spielberg movie or one of these guys, and you just leave kind of going, wow, there's something missing. And what is it? Yeah, I mean, you leave sometimes the movie theater going, Dad, they did okay, but that's what this is. But it's kind of a reality show, too, because they've turned Hollywood fiction into a reality show of what you're living every day. So when I say you walk out into a world of fiction, is really true, because you're taking the advice and living the story they're giving you, and you're not getting the full story. And that's all I'm saying. And so the episodes that I would like to see are quite interesting. And Obama is a key figure here. And if you look at every one of his policies, and I'm writing this as a movie reviewer, I believe that my script would be very simple. He should be impeached for some of the things that are so obvious. I mean, how can a guy in their movie script, if they really want a good story, how could he give billions and billions of dollars to Iran, protecting their nuclear program, and actually look at the American people and say, we're going to fight this terrorist? You know, he is basically supporting radical Islam. Yes. Now, one of the actors, the new guy on the scene, Donald Trump, has boldly said Hillary Clinton created ISIS, was the founder of ISIS. So we have something going on here that's quite interesting. And today, since there have been, you know, all of the news outlets are talking about these bombs that have went off. One bomb went off in the Chelsea district in New York, and then the guy who went around with a knife stabbing people in a mall in Minnesota. We have to deal with radical Islamic terrorism. Now, Obama's policies seem to aid the Muslims more than they aid the Americans. It's very simple. And that's their movie script. And he's getting away with bringing in, that's why they created this refugee problem. Not only have there been 400,000 people killed in Syria after we destabilized it, as well as destabilizing Libya, there are millions of refugees are flooding into countries all over Europe. You're seeing the havoc created there. And now they want to increase that in America by the other actress. Clinton wants to bring in over 650,000 of these people within her first term, or even more. I mean, they basically are bringing down this country in their movie. And the point is, Americans think that it's only what they tell you. Okay, so they can double talk their way out of most everything, and Americans will say if he's president, he must be on our side. Well, in this first half hour, I've only got like 3 minutes left. I'm going to start next half hour and show you what should be in this movie to prove that this character they're playing, that the reason for this character being a double-talking president is to create the reality of destroying Christianity in America as well as Western Europe, to create this huge conflict that's only going to benefit the producers and the script writers. Really, that's what Hollywood's all about when we strictly look at Hollywood. You think these guys that write these movies and these guys that produce these movies and the actors don't work together for their own benefit, making millions of dollars? And their movies really help this grand movie, the stage play I'm talking about. They work together. And that's the real story here. America has become a country controlled by that tube you're looking, that television tube or that movie screen. And they can do what they want with you. All I'm trying to say is, I'm looking at it as a reviewer of this movie, and we're centering on one actor today, Obama, which you might as well say Clinton too. She's basically an extension of him. And what I want to do in the second half hour is show you what should be in the movie, showing you that this man has been put there. His stage role is to destabilize this country, to basically create a religious war, which what it is, although he won't call it that because he's protecting them. And I'm going to show you how he protects them and the story you should know about behind the scenes. You should understand there's a couple questions I can ask and then answer them, which will show that this is what his role is. Now, if I was going to be allowed to put my episode in, that would kind of upset the apple cart of the producers, the Vatican, the Jesuits, and all of their minions that work for them. That includes Clinton, and I believe it includes Trump as well, and from a different point of view. And we'll get into that later. But let's take one step at a time, because this is a grand story. I mean, you can't eat the elephant, so to speak, or the donkey in one gulp. You got to take bite by bite. Pretty soon, you'll understand the whole story and realize that this is nothing more than a Hollywood movie right before your eyes. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, welcome back to the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on the September 19th, 2016 day on our calendar. And we're into the second part of the greatest off-Broadway play ever produced in the history of mankind, the presidential elections 2016. We're going over the real, as a movie reviewer would do, a good one, the real purpose for the role of President of the United States and the President now, Barack Obama, who's playing a major part in this new election coming up. And I find that quite interesting. And he's been selected as the main actor by the script writers and also the producers, the directors, who we've outed and told who they are. They, in a movie like this, they don't like to run credits after each day performance, and they put on daily performances. So if you're lucky to be lucky, and I mean lucky, to go to one of their rallies now, you're right there in the audience of the stage. If you catch it on TV or on the internet, you're more or less a moviegoer just like me. So I kind of like to tell you, and as I was explaining in the first half hour, why they selected this guy, what his part is, what his role is. And we went over that. And I said specifically, he's there to weaken this country, weaken the military, create havoc overseas. So his foreign policy is such, along with Hillary Clinton, who's nothing more than an extension of him. She's playing the big role here as the Democratic nominee. And I might add, she's failed. They've always had her in a role of failing. She's lost the last time she was there. And boy, they present her as a lying witch, is really what they've done. And half the country believes that. Interesting how they are even playing this in the movie. Hillary Clinton's role opposed to Donald Trump's role. Hillary being a globalist, Donald the Republican nominee selected for this part, cast as the Republican nominee, is the nationalist, the American first man. That's right there on the stage every day. But let's get back to Obama. Now, I've told you, yes, that's his role, and look at all of his policies. That's exactly what's happening. Weakened infrastructure of our country. They send billions to Iran, billions of dollars all over, but they can't provide a healthy inner city in our country. It's ridiculous. That's his role, though, and that's the movie you're watching. And you can go out every day, walk the streets of Detroit, walk the streets of Baltimore, go into the killing fields of south side of Chicago, which is an amazing story in itself. I mean, we got 3,000 deaths in Chicago, shootings in Chicago this year alone, and deaths since January 1st. I mean, it's. I mean, if you want to talk about it, I'd rather be in the poppy fields of Afghanistan, where they protect everybody because they want to bring the drugs over here. That's why our American soldiers are there. But that's their movie. And let's talk about Obama, and let's talk about. And I said in this half hour, I'll present to you two stories showing you what really we should know. Then we get an idea of why they're doing it. You see, we understand. We can look at what's going on today and say, yes, but where does this come from? First of all, we have to call it what it is. They are creating a war between Islam and Christianity. And at this point, it appears Obama's role is to strengthen that and to pit Islam and radical Islam. We're not even talking about the CIA's and the Vatican's extension to ISIS, what they're really doing. And we've had shows on that, showing the bad Jesuit Father Michel, Thomas Michel, along with others supporting Islam. We've talked about Father Del Oglio in Syria, working as a Jesuit behind the scenes to make sure that the money from the West gets to ISIS. They've done this before. And the CIA connection to all of this. Now, if you really want to know the truth, I'll just look back 15, 16 years ago to 9/11. And the real truth behind the stories is that there was a government inside job, and the CIA was very vital in making sure this thing worked. Now, if they did it then, don't you think they're doing it now? Of course. But that never gets into the script. So that's one thing you got to look at. Secondly, the most important thing is, they're pitting this huge war. You're hearing beheadings of Christians. Christians are being killed. I've shown you that by statistics. And you're seeing Christianity here being compromised by an infiltration of the Jesuits, the writers of this play, into our churches, which are skewing everything. They don't want you to talk about the Vatican. They're protecting them, both on the pulpit and in Congress. So, here's the deal. If they're creating a war with Islam pitted against the United States or Christianity in the West, which is obvious, right? They're using radical Islam as that. Has this ever happened before? And I'm not talking about the strife and the conflicts we've had with Iran back during the Carter administration and other things. I'm not even talking about World War II. You didn't hear World War II being a conflict of Islam against Christianity, did you? No. But did it ever happen before in history? Yes. It happened during the time of Muhammad and afterwards. And I've explained that. Now, there is solid evidence. You have to ask this question. Did the Vatican have a hand in creating Islam? Did the Vatican write the Quran, which came about in the 600s or 700s, right? Did they have a role in creating Muhammad? And what was that role back then? Now, that's the story that all of these historians, including Bill Riley, who I'm going to play a little clip about, fail to tell you. And they give you a lukewarm approach like, oh yeah, it was the Crusades and we were defending. But they don't ever get to the point that who wrote the Quran? right? We've talked, you know how many stories you're going to read about, God, the Bible wasn't true. You know how many times I was in Rome when some of these books came out in the 70s and early 80s called The Messianic Legacy, and all of these books, and I happen to know who the authors were, one being a Freemason from London. And the whole thing was questioning the validity of the Bible. How many times have you read that story? But then again, where are the stories about the validity of the Quran and the policies in the Quran, which are quite violent against anybody that doesn't believe the way they do, and Allah, and all of this, all of the things you hear about? I hear more of Western civilization talking about the credibility of Jesus and the Bible than I do about the Quran. So we have to look at some of those who have told us in the past, and their stories don't seem to make it in this movie, that the Quran was an extension of the Vatican, and Muslims were an extension of they created this enemy for a reason back then. And we've went over that a number of times. Go to some of my shows on why Islam was created back then and how they manipulated the populations back then to get their way. I can't do it right here because I'd spend the rest of the half hour doing that. So go back to some of my old shows, and I'm sure I'll do another show on that. So first, that's what needs to be dealt with. It isn't. Now, do you think that these actors who are in the role of president nominees and presidents know this? Yes. Who's giving them the script? Just where are they getting the words? Where they're getting their strategies? I believe they're getting it from the same people who created Islam back in the 700s. Of course, the generation passage of this through the Vatican organization, which has been around all those times. It was created far before Muslims were created. And I believe they're doing the same thing today. And the goal is the same. They have a strategy. This is what their movie is all about. And that's why you're not getting it from the top actors, because if they told you that, they'd be going off script, right? They'd be fired or killed. In this case, it gets serious, you know. So that's the part you're missing. That's the major part. We must ask that question. Has there been a conflict between Islam and the West, or is Christianity at another time in our history, going way back to the 600s and 700s? We can show that. Then what we have to do is basically show that history has been distorted, been changed, and been manipulated by the writers of this play for a reason, just like they did before. And that's the part of the story that needs to be told so you can get a real full understanding of what this movie is all about. Now, does anybody talk about exposing Islamic extremists today in the mainstream media? Yes. And let me go point out that Bill O'Reilly, who I'm going to play a little clip, did a short segment, and then I'm going to go a little bit deeper and show you what he's not telling you. So let's listen to this for a minute and see what he has to say, because he brings on something very interesting about the Clarion Project here. And the reason I want to play this is because after you ask that question of was there a conflict between Islam and the West prior to this, and really how did it occur, then we have to look at the main actor Obama, how he is protecting Islam today to destroy this country. That's his main role. And I'm going to prove it to you after O'Reilly presents a few things here that'll show you some things about what extremism is about in this country. But I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the story to prove without a doubt that Obama's main role is to bring extreme Muslim terror here to bring down this country. Okay, here's O'Reilly. Here we go.
Next segment tonight is a group called the Clarion Project, which is dedicated to exposing the dangers of Islamic extremism. Recently, we asked Clarion to pinpoint for us 5 dangerous situations here in the USA. With us, Ryan Morrow, National Security Analyst for the Clarion Project. So you have many, many more than this, but we picked the top 5 that I think will be of interest. The first one is in Hancock, New York, about 145 miles northwest of Manhattan. What's going on in Hancock?
There's actually a place there called Islamburg. They have a sign that says, "Welcome to Islamburg." It's about a 60, 70-acre large compound, and it's the headquarters for a group called Muslims of the Americas that follows a radical cleric in Pakistan. The videotape that's on the screen is something that was given to me by law enforcement, showing them engaging in guerrilla warfare training at that Islamburg compound.
Okay, so Islamburg, upstate New York. They have weapons. It's private property.
Right.
All right. They're training on the property. Can the authorities do anything about it?
Beyond monitoring them, no, because they're not listed as a foreign terrorist organization. FBI documents that we've obtained do show that they consider them a threat, but because they don't have that designation, they're able to operate in the U.S. and we have a dozen.
Do you know how many people are up at this compound?
And that specific one, no, but the estimates of the number of members that this group has across the country, they say they have 22 of these places across the country, is somewhere around 3,000.
Training ground. Wow. All right, now we have the Dar el Hara Islamic Center in Falls Church, Virginia. What's going on there?
Right, a history of radical leadership over there. Anwar al-Awlaki used to be their imam before he went over and he joined Al-Qaeda. And there was even videotape that was taken of the current imam speaking recently in Virginia, where he specifically said that Muslims should be first in line to get the arms for jihad.
All right, so at this center in Falls Church, there's an imam there presently,
right,
who wants to get arms for the jihad.
He preaches that is a requirement upon Muslims.
Wow. All right, the third one is one I mentioned last night in Brooklyn, New York, with John Stossel. It's the Masjid at-Taqwa Mosque. What's going on here?
That's led by Suraj Wahaj, one of the most radical imams in the country, yet he manages to be a rock star speaking at Muslim events across the country and college campuses.
He's going to be in Dallas this weekend in Garland, Texas for a big conference, and I brought that up to the imam we had on last night, who didn't seem to think this guy was so radical.
He didn't address that. He was addressing the issue of whether he's been prosecuted, which is a whole nother thing. If you look at what he's been preaching, it's sheer anti-Americanism, turning America into a caliphate, and his mosque was even suing the NYPD because they were conducting surveillance.
That's right, that de Blasio pulled off. So this is a bad hombre, as I said to Sasa last night. Then there's another one in New York City. This is in Jamaica, Queens, the Islamic Circle of North America. What's this all about?
This is a major organization with origins in Pakistan, with an Islamist group over there. Polls show that only about 2% of Muslim Americans say that this group represents them, but they're one of the most well-organized there. One of the leaders was actually indicted on war crimes in Bangladesh, and we have a copy of one of their teaching guides that tells Muslims to engage in deception in order to advance the jihadist cause and to implement Sharia governance.
All right, then this comes out of Queens, right? Out of this mosque. That's
the headquarters.
That's the headquarters. All right, and finally, and this is the most controversial one, you have CARE, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, and they've been on this program. They do a lot of media. And what are you saying, that they're a dangerous group?
Yes, they are basically a political influence operation of the Muslim Brotherhood, according to the Justice Department, not according to me. They specifically listed CARE as an entity of the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood, specifically its Palestine Committee that was secretly set up to advance the Hamas agenda. And the FBI wiretapped their leaders in 1993, talking about setting up CARE so they could influence the media in their direction.
Well, and that's what they do. They come out and they say, look, we're moderates, and we just want to give you our point of view. But you say that they're directly tied into terrorist groups?
Into the Muslim Brotherhood, yes.
Which is a terrorist group.
Right, and Hamas is the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay. Now, final question is, this is pretty frightening stuff, but you would assume the FBI knows about all of this, if you know about it, and the Justice Department is surveilling them and have them under control. And in a free and open society, this is the rest of them that we didn't talk about. This is the map that all of these have radical Muslim mosques or operations in all of those towns. And it's amazing. Look at them. Sacramento, outside of L.A., Pittsburgh, Chicago, on and on. So my question is, Should Americans be concerned, or is this under control?
It can't be under control just through monitoring them. And again, when it comes back to the issue of the ideology, which President Obama refuses to recognize,
Yes.
That's the problem here. It's not just about the person that's setting off the bomb. It's about the overall ideology that combines mosque and state, that justifies jihad anywhere, and we need Muslim leaders to step up and fight against those interpretations. The most positive news I've seen is the poll that showed that these organizations have so little support among Muslim Americans.
Right. All right. Very interesting, Mr. Morrow. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to present that to you really quickly. That was on mainstream media, and it's quite interesting. Now, my question is very simple. There must be policies coming down from the top that allow these obvious radical Islamic groups, and I looked at that map all over the country, to exist. And even so bold as to sue people who say they shouldn't exist in this country. They must be protected, mustn't they? Who's protecting them? I say it comes right down from the top, the lead actor Obama. And this shows you another reason why in their movie he's trying to destroy this country. The Trojan horse, folks, is already here. That's the tip of the iceberg, because I want to present to you a real problem that's going on here, and I can relate it to what happened in the coup in Turkey. Talk about Fethullah Gulen, who I was aware of 10 years ago, and what he's doing here in the United States and who's protecting him. That is a shocking story that has not been covered properly by the mainstream media, and I believe the reason is that that really shows a connection between the Jesuits, the scriptwriters, our government, and what our real policy is here behind the scenes on both sides of the aisle. Now, I might have, I got about 5 minutes, I might have to do that tomorrow, so stay tuned and come back to part 16 tomorrow. I've done shows on it before, but I want to synthesize it here and show you how dangerous this really is for us and what we're really up against. Now, how do these groups get in here? How can we have radical mosques that openly support killing Americans and infidels right in our country, all over? You saw that map. I saw it anyway. Go check it out. I mean, from there's at least 40 places that were on that map known by the FBI, but they allow this to continue. Why? I said there has to be a protective policy coming back from, I believe, the producers, the Vatican, right down to the scriptwriters, right then to the actor, main actor Obama, and all the people that work under him, to downplay this threat. Why? The main goal is to destroy this country and its Christian fabric. Then my next question is, they seem to protect these organizations more than they protect Christian ministries who are preaching the Word of God and outing the Vatican for what they really are. And I've highlighted that in the Obama ministry. Go to all my stories regarding how they put this pastor in jail for 175 years. How the people that were involved with a very good Christian ministry had their children taken away. How they're trying to take away their property. My question is, why aren't they taking the property of these radical Islamic preachers? They have to be protected. And they're not protecting the American Christian people. One, they're allowing Christianity to exist in a lukewarm form, like I said, because the Jesuits have infiltrated, and they do not want any criticism regarding the writers and the producers, the Vatican, showing they're the Antichrist Luciferian system that's taking over this country. No, that can't be put in the movie. My next question is, has this ever happened before? Have we ever allowed into this country a religious organization that was a threat to our country, Christianity? My answer is yes. It happened when the Constitution of the United States was ratified and Catholicism was allowed to be practiced in this country. Because prior to that, if you look at us back in the 1600s, the one organization that wasn't allowed here was Catholicism because of what they did in Europe. But they weaseled and finagled their way in, And from one small diocese in Washington, by the way, owned by the first bishop of the Jesuits, that's where our capital is, they've grown into this monster. But they've done it in a kind of a shape, just the way that Islam is doing it. Oh, we're moderates. We're allowed to be here. But these moderates are the same ones in Islam that want to destroy Christianity. Now, back in the old days, before the Constitution, opened the doors to any, we have a clause called religious freedom. The Jesuits were not welcome here. They were feared. Catholic could not hold office in this country. And there was a very few of them. Out of the 2.5 million people here, maybe back in the mid-1600s, and don't quote me, my numbers may be a little bit off. There were only about 15 to 16,000 Catholics here that were known. Very small minority, but they've grown to be the biggest organization here in this country. And the same thing in Islam. When you see Islamic people start out small, when they grow into a large organization, they take it over. I only got 25 seconds. I'll continue that tomorrow, but can't you see the similarities? Why isn't that discussed? And I believe the Constitution was ratified to allow Catholicism in the door here, just like now Obama's allowing radical Islam to fester and grow. Same situation going on today. And that's why Catholicism and Islam are quite similar. I've done shows on that too, and there are many people who have talked about it. Look it up, please. It's the key to showing why Obama has been put here as this actor selected and what his policies really mean. All right, I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back tomorrow with part 16 of the greatest stage play ever produced in the history of mankind, the presidential elections. See you tomorrow.
Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.